Hello there and welcome. This is Point of View. I'm Mark Leishman, and tonight we're going to feature FarmIQ. Now, this is a company which describes itself as a neutral, open, map-based technology platform. And in fact, it is an information hub. It's to help farmers, processors and retailers understand what's happening on farm, and then of course make those informed and much better decisions. So my guest is the FarmIQ General Manager of Strategy and Marketing, Tim Nichols, and he's with me tonight for the full half hour.
Good.
Tim, welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Tell us firstly, I suppose, just to set it all up, your background.
Yeah, so look, I've been in technology marketing for the best part of 25 years. I don't come from an agricultural background. I've worked in all sorts of sectors. I specialise, I guess, in sort of high growth, high tech companies. I've been in New Zealand about 15 years, and I've worked with people like Vodafone. I was behind some of the 2 Degrees brand stuff, which was pretty cool a few years ago. I've worked in cybersecurity, kind of lots of odd places. But yeah, look, I now find myself in ag.
Yeah, and you know the agricultural arena is actually, it is quite innovative when it comes to technology, isn't it? And are they, you know, early adopters of technology?
Look, I think it's a great question, right? There's a classic bell curve here where you've got some really early adopters doing some really cool stuff, and then you've got a very, very long tail of very late adopters. So look, I think it's a really interesting spread, but I'm not sure you would call the sector an early adopter of technology. I'm not sure that's a fair characterization, simply because of the long tail that's there.
Yeah, but of course, you know, having to rely on technology much more, because it's helping run a farm so much cleverly, if you like, more cleverly. Yeah,
look, you know, there is no doubt that the role of tech on farm is changing really quickly, and there's no doubt that farmers are making, you know, well-informed decisions about how they adopt, you know, everything from IoT through to farm recording, from, you know, stuff out in the paddocks to get better insights into what they're doing. But look, it's a slow adoption, and look, I think a lot of the issues around, you know, return on investment just aren't clear to farmers, and there's still a lot of work to do to get farmers really exploiting the benefits.
Has that a lot to do with connectivity? Has that been an issue?
Look, I think connectivity was an issue to some extent. I think the connectivity issues are being resolved quite quickly. I think when we look at our farms or look at our customers, we find that about half of farms have now got connectivity in the paddocks, and obviously, you know, with rural broadband now connecting farmhouses, and you know, the connectivity to the kitchen is certainly not an issue anymore. So look, I think that the barrier of connectivity is really kind of reducing quite quickly now. I think the issue now is about you know, providing farmers with really good tech that's easy to use, that's robust, that will actually stand the pressure of farm life, because frankly it's a bloody tough environment for tech.
Mm-hmm. And so where does FarmIQ come in? You've got the platform there. What do you do to encourage farmers on board?
Yeah, so look, you know, FarmIQ is a, as you say, it's a piece of technology. It's a software as a service platform that farmers can use to do a whole bunch of different stuff, right? So it doesn't have one really simple, straightforward use case. It's applied by lots of different farmers in lots of different ways. Generally, farmers come to us with some kind of issue, right? So they come to us and go, look, I want to create better animal health records, or I want to, you know, keep on top of my land treatments for regional council reporting, or very often it's actually I need to keep a better stock rec. So when we can have a conversation with a farmer about a particular issue on farm, then the functionality inside FarmIQ is there and can be applied to that problem, and yeah, we kind of get them on that journey towards adopting it and changing their behaviour. But there's a lot of behaviour change required to get farmers to change the way they do things and to adopt the technology. But if they do, the benefits are really substantial, and they make a lot of difference.
So I'll come from a point of view of not knowing anything about FarmIQ. Tell us, is it just one platform, or is it a whole range of things within well, I guess an umbrella of that name, FarmIQ?
Yeah, so look, it's again, it's another good question. So FarmIQ it's worth understanding the backstory actually. So FarmIQ is the product of or is the legacy, if you like, of a primary growth partnership initiative from nearly 10 years ago, where the government identified that there was effectively value on the table left behind in the red meat industry because the right information wasn't flowing through the value chain. So farmers weren't getting the right signals from consumers, and processors weren't getting the right signals. So
they weren't growing the right stuff, I think?
Well, they were growing the right stuff, but they weren't necessarily getting the full value from it. Yeah. So FarmIQ was one of a number of projects that was part of the PGP, and at the end of the PGP in 2017, the technology arm was spun off into a private company, which is now FarmIQ Systems. And within there is a huge range of functionality. So farmers can exploit that functionality through different subscriptions. And sort of agribusiness partners can come and exploit the platform as an alternative to effectively building this stuff themselves from scratch. So, we have some very cool agribusiness partners like Sinlay or Farmlands who come in and use the technology to create customer intimacy or to run farm or meat or milk assurance programs and gather the data. But it all comes back to farmers using the technology behind the farm gate and recording what they're doing in a very, in quite a structured way, in order that data can then be exploited by lots of other different parties with the appropriate permission of the farmer.
Mm-hmm. So you're talking about individual farmers, not necessarily the like the Sinlays. I mean, that's a biggish company, I guess. But this is really, you were talking just to Joe down the road who's got a 500 cow herd and yes, so many acres.
So look, FarmIQ almost has two businesses within one, right? So we have what we call a B2C, business to consumer model, where farmers come to us and they buy our technology very specifically because they want to improve their farm or achieve particular outcomes. And then we have what we call a business to business strategy, where we work with people like Sinlay or Farmlands who have a particular objective in mind and they want to build a particular piece of technology and then roll that out to their customers or shareholders or suppliers, right? So there are two sides to the story, and we run both of those two sort of business strategies side by side, and they complement each other. So farmers that subscribe to to Farmlands products then become obvious customers for our own products. So it's a very effective way of reaching a broader set of customers than you might otherwise be able to do through traditional rural marketing.
Do you have any, was there a case study, an obvious case study or something that you could say is an example of where this really works well?
Yeah, so look, there's a couple of really good examples. So Farmlands is one of our kind of poster children. So Farmlands are actually a shareholder in FarmIQ, and they came to us and said, look, we want to build customer intimacy with our shareholders. They've got 66,000 shareholders, and for them, health and safety is a really important part of their brand. So they believe that they can create value for the rural community and their shareholders by providing them tools that keep them safe. So they came to FarmIQ and said, look, can we work with you to create a tool or a pack, if you like, or a system that we can give to our shareholders that improves their health and safety on farm. So we work with them and their health and safety team, and they've rolled out a product called Safe Farm that has a companion product called Safe Visit, which is all about helping farmers identify their hazards on farm, keep track of all of any incidents, assess their risks, manage contractors visiting farms, and actually building a complete health and safety system that WorkSafe New Zealand recognised as being a really important part of the rural landscape.
So basically, the farmer answers the questions that this provides or asks, and he's got a farm safety plan just like that.
Yeah, absolutely, right.
And the same presumably goes for farm environment plans, all the various can do.
You know, within FarmIQ, as I said, there's a huge range of functionality. We've obviously got the health and safety stuff. We've got farm environment planning templates. We've got farm assurance planning templates. So all of those bits of functionality are available to farmers if they want to pay for that stuff, which is great. And there's 4,500 farmers on the platform now. And then we work with people like Beef and Lamb, and we're in some interesting conversations with MPI at the moment about how they might be able to exploit the functionality in the platform to the good of New Zealand. Obviously, as being part of a primary growth partnership, the government's already put a reasonably substantial amount of money into this system. So we're very keen that that gets exploited to the good of New Zealand, right? The company has a very clear industry good sort of DNA, and part of that is about working out how we can put this technology into the hands of more farmers, because when it's used well, it makes a real difference to the kind of productivity and the insight that we get into the rural community.
But if you have a question, you think I've got to start a plan, a safety plan, I don't know how to begin. Suddenly you've got the template there, you've got a guide effectively to do so.
We've got a tool, that's right. So we know that 30,000 farmers in New Zealand have got to create an FEP. Yeah. We know we've got greenhouse gas requirements. We've got a whole bunch of stuff going on here, and farmers are now popping up and going, hey, how do I start? Where do I make a start? And actually we go, right. Actually, creating the bones of an FEP is pretty straightforward. You just follow the instructions and follow the template, and you can get a long way through the process. So we're certainly starting to see a fair bit of that.
And the fact is, it's not going to go away. You're going to have to do it at some stage, so you might as well start.
Look, there's no doubt that we spend a lot of time with farmers, obviously, as you'd imagine, trying to understand what are the levers and what are the drivers, and the compliance burden that farmers are now faced with is huge, right? So you've got a carbon zero obligation now to measure it and make a difference. You've got a healthy water requirement now as a result of the recent legislation. You've got farm assurance, which is a really important part of New Zealand's story to the world, if you like, about how we the standards we maintain. And when you put all of that together, what you discover is there's a lot of duplication. It's largely the same data, and the question that we try and solve is, well, how do you, if it's all the same data, how do you capture the data once and then allow it to flow to all of the different places that need it really, really easily?
And that's what you can do.
Well, that's what we do, right? And that's actually that's the reason why we exist, if you like.
I mean, how important is the role of technology in agriculture? Is it vital? I mean,
yeah, I think it is becoming vital. I think there's as I said, there's a long tail of farmers that are still a way off, but there's obviously an intergenerational shift here going on where you've got farmers moving between hands and being shared, and there's a younger generation coming through that's much more that's much more
they want to do it too.
But I think for me the piece that's really important here is, if we are going to continue to grow on the world stage and we're going to tell our story, then technology plays a critical part in that. There's some media around this morning with Waitrose who come out and said, hey, we're only going to sell British beef, and we're going, actually that's a real problem. And that the way we need to address that is with better stories, with actually helping farmers understand, helping global markets understand what the real New Zealand story is. And when you take that New Zealand story apart, it's got to be substantiated with data, and the data that you use for that story is in FarmIQ. And in fact, we had a lovely example this week with a company called Sheep Inc., who are a UK or a European manufacturer of fashion, and they sort of have a belief that the fashion industry is basically morally bankrupt, and that actually New Zealand, that consumers of fashion need to get much closer to their supplier. So they've launched a fashion brand called New Zealand Inc., where you effectively adopt a New Zealand merino sheep from some farms down in Otago. And as you then learn the story of your sheep through regular emails and regular updates, and all of that data is actually flowed out of FarmIQ. And then, when the time comes, you get a jumper, and the jumper's got a story, and the story is told by FarmIQ. So look, I'm really passionate about that provenance story, because I think that's critical to the long-term success of New Zealand. And that provenance story is founded in good data capture behind the farm gate, and that's the thing that we've got to do well.
We're facing a battle of miles, aren't we? We're an isolated part of the world, which has been a bonus, but sometimes your bonus can be your biggest failing as well, or weakness. The fact is, we've got to get our stuff to the other side of the world, and
we've got to help the other side of the world understand why it's so unique. And I believe it is unique, and I believe the proposition that we have is, grass-fed, GM-free, antibiotic-free. That story, when you can get it right back to a paddock, is really rich, and it's really compelling. And actually, the faster we can tell that story, the better.
Tim Nichols is my man today. He's my guest, FarmIQ's General Manager of Strategy and Marketing. And we'll be back with Tim with more questions right after this break. This is Point of View. Welcome back. This is Point of View. I'm Mark Leishman. My guest from FarmIQ is Tim Nichols. Tim, what does FarmIQ, what value does it create for farmers?
Oh, look, it's a great question, and a lot of it comes down to the problem that the farmer's trying to solve, right? So, if the farmer can articulate a problem, then we can help them solve them. But at a very general level, what we've discovered is actually there's a sort of a simple four-legged story, if you like. So, first, when farmers start adopting technology on farm, the first thing they find is it kind of streamlines their processes, right? So it becomes much easier to communicate with staff, to know who's supposed to be doing what, to track shopping lists, to do a whole bunch of really simple things that get digitally managed effectively. So you're effectively replacing kind of the whiteboard in the wool shed and some notebook stuff, and you're making all that stuff a bit easier to manage.
A real-time diary that just keeps ticking over, presumably, right, telling you what you should be doing. So
streamlining your kind of process is the first thing. The second thing is, once you've kind of started to get a whole bunch of recorded data in FarmIQ, you start to make better decisions. Right, so if you know what happened last year in a particular month with a particular mob, or you can, when you've got better data, you can start using it more actively in the decision-making process. So once you've got a good base of data to do that, then actually what you discover is that same data is the same data you need to give to the regulator. So in fact, capturing data makes compliance really easy, or at least simplifies that process, reduces the time burden. And then if you've got enough data, what you then discover is that you've actually got an asset, and that asset becomes a value to a future generation or a future owner of your farm, because 5 years of FarmIQ data really captured well is the closest thing to an instruction manual for a farm you're ever going to get. So we have farmers who actually recognize the value of the asset now, because digital records are searchable and usable and far more practical than a row of 50 A4 diaries on a wall.
And the data backs up exactly what you need to know or sell.
At least you know which paddocks are more efficient or more productive than other paddocks, which breeds perform better in which conditions. So you can then find all that data out.
What's the vision for your system, FarmIQ? Where are you going with it?
So look, we have a bold vision, right? And the vision comes from our past. So we want to become the information platform for New Zealand for agricultural data. And I think our belief here is that you kind of only need one. you have multiple platforms for data, you might as well have hundreds, right? So if you're going to actually drive real value and real change, then you actually need one platform where all of this data comes together and it all gets shared from the into to wherever it needs to go. So yeah, fragmentation is the enemy of really good data management in this scenario. So yeah, our vision or our goal is to actually become the platform, and that's not a sort of commercial dominance of the world. It's a recognition that this is what the industry needs. That this platform was designed to do this, and actually this is there's an obligation here on our part to make this happen, because we passionately believe that this is the right thing to do.
So as you say, you input the data once and it's, I guess, disseminated. It goes to all the places it needs to go to.
Exactly right, and that's, we're very fortunate to have a bunch of shareholders that totally understand that. So our shareholders are leading the way by helping us do exactly that for different reasons. But we've most close to the tipping point of 4,500 commercial farmers. You've got enough data now to make this thing really start to go on its own.
And of course, a major part of that is compliance. So tell us about that. What is going on across the industry re-compliance?
Yeah, look, compliance is a huge deal. So, when we talk about tailwinds for technology adoption, so provenance and traceability is one, productivity and productivity gain is another, and then compliance is the third leg of the stool, right? So you've got a whole raft of different pieces of compliance that farmers are now facing, which they don't have any choice, whether it's IRD, WorkSafe, greenhouse gas, healthy water, FAP. There is a lot there, right? And I think our insight is that there's a lot of data that's the same, that's common, and that if you can make that data share much more easily, then you're gonna make farmers' life a lot easier, and that's reflected in some government initiatives. So we have Minister O'Connor announced the Integrated Farm Planning Initiative through MPI, which is all about going, how do you help farmers bring all of that compliance stuff together in one place, and how do we reduce the burden? So I think the government has acknowledged now that there's a compliance burden problem here that's getting in the way. There's a desire to do something about it, which is bloody awesome, and there are some really useful conversations going on between industry, lots of different bodies within the industry trying to figure out how to solve it.
So is the MPI doing enough?
Oh, look, MPI is doing exactly what MPI is supposed to do at this stage in the process, which is to get all of the people together to look at the problem collectively, and actually to see whether or not industry will solve the problem for itself, or whether indeed there is a true market failure here and government should step in, right? So, the government will step in as almost like an act of last resort, and only once industry has failed to solve the problem. Now, I think from our perspective, industry has solved the problem. Hasn't solved the problem. There is almost no incentive for the industry to solve the problem.
The problem being like the compliance issue.
Yeah. So there's almost no incentive for industry to solve the problem. So it's
the elephant in the room.
I think it's turning into the elephant in the room, and time is not we don't have time on our side here, right? The world is turning very, very quickly. Markets are moving very quickly. If we don't do something soon, then the value that we have here in New Zealand will be eroded, and we'll start to lose it to those international markets, because we simply can't keep up with the compliance burden that's sitting on top of farmers today.
So what role does FarmIQ have in that? I mean, are you well on the way? Do you feel like you've got the machinery there to do the job?
Look, I think we have a platform, right? So solving this problem starts with a platform. The platform is robust, it's scalable, it ticks all the right boxes. It requires industry to agree to solve it in a particular way. Look, and we're starting to talk to MPI about how do you prototype some of these things? How do you develop the ideas that show how this might work for farmers? And then how do we bring that stuff to life? So, look, I think the wheels are turning. I think FarmIQ is in a really useful useful and interesting place that has the potential to create this value should New Zealand Inc. decide that it wants to tackle it this way. And I think, the message is, the clock is ticking here. And the industry has given itself 2 years to sort out this greenhouse gas thing before it starts to before it runs into the back of the ETS, and actually that's not very long. So we need some tools. We need them now, and building this stuff from scratch is incredibly expensive. So don't build it from scratch. Use what you've already got.
Exactly. And if we screw it up?
Look, I think screwing it up's really it's not an option. It's really concerning, and we screw it up to the cost of New Zealand Inc. Right? We can already see some of the themes and the trends going on around the world, and I think if we don't get our act together here, we will see our export of our primary industries, start to falter, right? And we need them to grow, and we need New Zealand to be, the leader in premium product, and
be able to tell that good story.
Be able to tell a beautiful green pasture, grass-fed story to the world, and there are barriers that we're facing that we have to get over.
So the best way for someone to find out more about, I think everyone knows FarmIQ, but they need to know more.
I hope so. Look, if you want to know more, then you just jump on the website, go to farmiq.co.nz, and if you click the little button in the right-hand corner with the live chat, then a lovely lady called Lou will come and talk to you. It's as easy as that.
Tim Nichols, FarmIQ's General Manager of Strategy and Marketing, our guest on Point of View this week. We'll have another Point of View at the same time next week. We'll see you then.